The day Michelle was born, I know it was pouring rain. I was supposed to have a tea time, probably like 7:30 with my brother-in-law. And when I didn't show up, he knew where we were.
And she ended up coming about 6:30 that morning. It was a rainy morning.
I was in through the whole thing, and I ended up cutting the cord.
She was beautiful. She was beautiful.
So would you say Michelle was a fighter from the beginning?
I would say she was always a go-getter. She was never going to be one that had anything stand in the way.
Michelle was very independent. She would go off and do everything herself. She needed no help from anyone.
She was willing to try a million things, whether it was, she played 5 different high school sports. She, was the campfire, the basketball, the softball. She worked about 5 different jobs, all through high school. She was willing to try anything.
She was the smallest girl in a lot of the basketball teams, but she was very scrappy. She didn't let down. She fought for everything.
What was one of your favorite things that the two of you shared when she was a child?
A love of music. From day one, I used to sing to her. Well, I don't know if I'd call it singing, but sing her a song or something like that when she'd go to bed. And driving home from the Cape was the best part. Denise, when we'd both have 2 cars, and Chris would drive home with Denise, and Michelle and I would drive home in my car and have the stereo blasting the whole way. She'd be in her car seat with her legs going, her hands going.
I would say I enjoyed very much having a chance to coach her early on, basketball and softball.
When she left basketball, I was sort of disappointed because I thought she was a very scrappy little basketball player. But she joined the hockey team, which they had just started, I think, when she was a sophomore or a freshman. And I said to her, Michelle, you've never ice skated. She said, I played street hockey and I rollerblade. What's the difference? And she had the time of her life.
Michelle was a good student. She loved writing. So anything that involved writing and like journalism, she absolutely loved her journalism class. She always had a way with words. She could always, they were her magic. She could always spin a story, greatly exaggerated, but always entertaining.
This is a funny story. Denise was in Michelle's bedroom, and she turned the ceiling fan on, and this paper fell off the ceiling fan, and it was a contract for Michelle and Chris.
She was big into contracts. She kind of had a contract for everything, mostly that I wouldn't tell on her for such and such, and she wouldn't tell on me for this.
I'm not sure all the writings that was in this contract, but her and Chris signed the contract that they would be watching each other's back, and don't be telling Mom and Dad.
And yeah, that was a lot of tormenting throughout childhood. I was probably 7 or 8, and there was a dog in the neighborhood that got loose, and this was before I got home. Apparently he was going around just kind of humping everything. So when I got home, Michelle told me that they wanted to play with me and that I should go in the backyard and get on all 4s and pretend like I'm a dog. And I did what she said, and I thought it would be fun until the dog proceeded to mount me and attempted to have its way with me. Well, Michelle, I remember her just sitting on the deck just laughing. But it wasn't always like that. As we got older, she really eased up on that, and came kind of a mutual bond where we were both on each other's side.
She came down to Tampa and the warm weather and her love of the ocean. I think that was probably her main reasons for coming down here.
Yeah. That's the time kids go away to college, they start to blossom. Everything's an adventure and everything's new and exciting. And that was certainly the case with her. And I think the very first weekend we came down here for Parents' Weekend, she said, I just love it here, I'll probably never come home.
She loved Florida. So obviously, me being in high school, college with her down there, used to be some awesome times visiting her. Just great parties that she was always the life of. And she was never afraid to cross the line, even in front of me. Really, no filter. I don't think that even does her justice saying no filter, because there was not even close to a filter on there.
I think she loved the weather, she loved the city, she loved the new friends she was making.
We were sitting at Gaspar's Grotto, me and my fiance, and she had walked up to us and she looked at us and she said, "You guys, including her, we're the 3 most attractive people in this bar, and we're gonna be friends. And if anybody knew Michelle, you knew that you didn't argue with her."
And she bought us a drink and we hung out with her all night long. We exchanged phone numbers. We found out she was our neighbor that lived in the building across from us.
And it was one of the best friendships I've ever had.
I don't remember what the first thing she said to me was, but I do remember 2 of the first things that were said. And both of them were fairly inappropriate, but they both set the stage for the entire weekend, because the great thing about Michelle is that there was no filter. What was on her mind was what she was going to say, and if she thought it was funny, she was going to share it. And I mean, I've never laughed so hard and shared so many what would traditionally be considered inappropriate stories over that first weekend, where she swam over in the pool and we started talking and literally never stopped for 3 days. But you know, the first thing she wanted to know was, am I an attorney and am I a dick? Because that's what she was currently looking for in a guy. And I said, well, no, I'm not an attorney, but I certainly have been called the other a few times. During this whole same conversation, when we met, Michelle's floating over to me. There's another girl on the float, and Michelle proceeds to tell me that she is recently out of a relationship and that her goal for the summer is to see how much weight she can gain, and that she hasn't shaved her legs in at least 10 days. And right around the same part of that conversation, she introduces me to her friend on the float as her girlfriend. So I assumed she was a lesbian, and that was okay. You know, I didn't have any cool, funny lesbian friends, so I was like, this is going to work out okay. So we, you know, continued to hang out, and a few hours later, we had to go get ready for the soccer match, and I went up to her condo and kind of was freshening up, and we were, you know, joking and continuing the storytelling, and as we left, she kind of cornered me by the door and finally just said, "Hey, are you gonna kiss me or not?" And I looked at her and I said, "But I thought you were a lesbian." And then you know, we determined that that was not the case.
I think she had met him on a Saturday, and Sunday they were headed to lunch. And during her lunch, she texted me and said, "Hi, I'm having lunch with my future husband."
But she was so excited. She told us all about him, and that wasn't like Michelle. She just went on and on about this Ryan that she met at the pool.
She called me on the phone and she said, "I want you to meet the guy that I'm gonna marry." And so we all went over there and we had drinks and before we went out to the bar, and we had a great time.
And they were a perfect match from the start. That was when Ryan had hair.
The thing about John Paul, Sean, and Michelle that they all have in common is that they're not very bashful. The camping trip at Hillsborough River State Park included all the usual things: hiking and campfires and hot dogs and, for us, a lot of booze. But the following day we were out hiking and found a small cliff and a creek, and I mean, naturally, anyone would want to go swimming. But Sean, John Paul, Michelle don't just swim, they swim nude.
Me and Michelle would go skinny dipping, and Ryan and John Paul would go chunky dunking.
Well, her and Sean are the smaller ones, so they went skinny dipping and me and Ryan went chunky dunking because we were the thicker people.
But I always think back to our very first camping trip. You know, sometimes I think about, you know, what was it that first really impressed me about Michelle's character? Not just what made me laugh and what did I think was cute or sexy, but what was the thing that made me stop in my tracks and say, man, this girl's different. So the first camping trip that we went on was to Myakka River, and it was very impromptu, and we knew nothing about camping and just packed as much stuff in our bags as we possibly could. But the short of the story is that, 8 miles in, we started to get kind of frustrated because we thought maybe we had lost our way, or maybe we weren't going to get there before dark, and we realized maybe we had bit off a little bit more than we could chew. And we never gave up, though. We stayed focused and made sure we were making good choices, and we finally got there. And while that's all fine and good, that's not what impressed me so much. When we finally set up camp, she took off her shoes, and her entire heels, all the way around her ankles down to the bottom of her heel, were covered in the biggest blisters I've ever seen. And she never said a word about it. She never complained once.
I always figured she'd be running her own company someday. I didn't know it'd be 2 years out of college.
The time was right and everything was working for her, so I wasn't surprised. I was maybe just surprised that it was sooner than I had anticipated. But again, she was never, she was always willing to take the chances and go out on a limb, and she didn't ever feel she had to play things safe. So in that respect, I wasn't surprised.
When we came down here, it was 7, 8 o'clock at night, and she was still in that office working. So she would put 14, 15-hour days in.
That work ethic is how she approached her business as well. And that's why she grew it so quickly. That's why her clients loved her so much.
3:30 in the morning, I get an email. Michelle had actually taken a look at our website and gave us a critique, a constructive criticism critique, unsolicited. It was wonderful information.
I mean, she was up 6 o'clock in the morning, sitting in front of her computer and just typing all day. I've got a keyboard of hers that she used for less than a year, and it doesn't have the letters on it because that's how much she typed.
Michelle was always the Energizer Bunny because she would send me emails at 3 in the morning, 6 in the morning, 11 at night. She's always thinking of new creative ideas.
She knew that making her company successful was one thing, but what good is it if you're not giving back to the community that has given you your success?
And I know Michelle through High Hopes and High Heels. We both, I was one of the co-founders of the organization, and Michelle joined, and shortly after she joined, she became a board member because she was so involved.
Michelle helped to put on the teen prom and the parent-patient dances for the kids at the Children's Cancer Center, and she was my co-chair in those events and worked with the ladies from High Hopes and High Heels to truly put on memorable events for these kids that involved limos and corsages and catered food and the most amazing experiences for them.
She was particularly attracted to groups like the Children's Cancer Center. She threw a huge gala for Redefining a Refuge that turned out just to be a wildly successful and fun party.
It was watching Michelle go from this party girl that I knew to doing High Hopes and High Heels and doing all these charity benefit events, the things that I think Ryan inspired her to do.
Ryan called us and asked for permission to marry our daughter, which I thought it was like, boy, that's a Southern gentleman.
And so Ryan called a partners meeting and sat us both down to let us know that, he was planning on proposing, to Michelle, and wanted, to let us know and get our blessing and sharing the excitement and everything.
I had planned a camping trip to a small island off of Fort Myers, and I did that strategically because I knew that we could pretend like we were going camping, and then at the last moment I could ask her to marry me, and then instead of going to a secluded island, which wouldn't have been a bad thing, we instead could celebrate the occasion by taking the Key West Express down to Key West and spending the weekend there.
The wedding was, fantastic.
Yeah, we had it in a friend of ours' house in Falmouth. It was a very hot day though, but it was absolutely gorgeous.
All their family and friends were there. The house had a balcony so people could watch from above. the ceremony. They went a non-traditional route, and Ryan's childhood best friend, Darren, became ordained over the internet, over the magical interwebs, and married the two of them. And I was actually humbled and honored to be able to speak during the ceremony.
I think, mothers and daughters will always have that part of sharing, and that was certainly special for me.
We were excited to buy the house and start a family and, probably do it all at the same time, because why not?
So what did you think when you first saw this home that Michelle and Ryan had bought?
They have their work cut out for them. It was a foreclosure, and I tell people I think there was animals living in here.
It's the cat pee house.
Cat pee, dog pee, bird pee, who knows what else kind of pee in here. Oh, this house, it would take your breath away. Unbelievable. This house smelled so bad that the realtor who showed it to us didn't go in the house. He knocked on the door and said, "I'm going to go wait in the car," and let us speak with the owner at the time.
So my first, thought when I saw the house was, my God, what a fantastic piece of property right on the river here, so peaceful and so calm and so pretty. And the indoor, it didn't faze me, because I knew that would be just like her and Ryan, something that they would take on. And I knew the beginning, project, it was going to be a project, but the beginning was not going to be what it was going to end up like.
I mean, you look at it now and it's like, no one would ever think that this house was a disaster.
This house, like a lot of the things we took on, was a big challenge. But we did very well with it. Michelle was very passionate about adopting a child who maybe was overlooked by a lot of others who go into adoption, meaning not a baby.
I remember her saying that she didn't want an infant. She wanted some child that was 5 or 6 years old, because those are the children that are left behind.
Part of the adoption process, part of the MAPS class, is to make a scrapbook for the child that you do not yet know. For the marathon, she had carried a sign with her the whole way in her pack. And after we passed the finish line, she pulled it out and had me take a picture of her with her sign, because that was going to be a picture for the scrapbook. And the sign said, "I ran 26.2 miles for you before I even knew you." So, we all lost someone special, but someone who we don't even know also did.
I was heading to go ice fishing in Maine, and Michelle called me and told me that she was having some sinus problems, that she was going to the doctor. And I was supposed to leave about 5 o'clock that night, and I had called my friend saying, "Jerry, I don't feel good about this. I want to wait till Michelle calls me back." And he said, "Fine, we can leave later." Well, that call came later, and it wasn't good news.
That evening, Ryan called to tell us that they had found a mass in Michelle's, on her brain. And what was I thinking at that moment? Maybe, how is this possible,
Within the span of 2 hours, you have a mass on your brain. We don't know what it is, but it is a tumor. Now I'm sitting in ICU.
Or looking at the MRIs, it really looked like she was a GBM, which is a grade 4, the more advanced stage.
How do you tell people that you've just been diagnosed with a brain tumor? How do you tell people that you love that, that you may have 6 to 12 to 18 months to live? Michelle, most people, I feel like, would get that news and think, oh, woe is me. What am I going to do? And the fighter mentality is part about what she was going to do, but it had nothing to do with how it was going to impact her. It was how it was going to impact everyone else. And from the very moment that she found out, even before we even got to the ER, Michelle wanted to know, how are we going to tell my parents? My parents are going to be so upset. To me, she says, Ryan, this isn't how our second year of marriage is supposed to go. She didn't care about what it was going to happen to her. She cared about how it was going to impact other people. And it's because of that process that the fighter mentality ended up coming together.
When I see patients, and I break news like this to patients all the time, and typically patients will take a long time to really come to grasp with what they have. But she, within a short period of time, she really embraced the diagnosis, and rather than focusing on the negative side of things about what a gloomy diagnosis, she really looked out on the positive side and said, well, how can we move forward and fight this disease?
Fighting cancer is not easy. I don't want to downplay that at all. But the fighter mentality is so much more than that. The fighter mentality is more about how are you going to impact others because of your circumstance? How are you going to change people and inspire people because of the cards that you've been dealt? We all have a life, and all of our lives are terminal. None of us really know how long we have. So why aren't all of us focused on what we're going to do good to impact the world that we're living in?
I got to tell you, when she was talking about doing the whole Facebook thing, starting the author page, and putting it all out there, I mean, our generation doesn't do that, It's what the young generation does, and I was a little bit leery about it. I was like, geez, I don't know. But I changed my mind very quickly on it because I could see the people she was touching and the people she was helping and the awareness that it was bringing.
So she calls us one day and she says, I've come up with an idea and I want to get a tattoo, the fighter tattoo. And she came up and she designed her own image and everything. So John Paul and I actually took her to the tattoo parlor, her and Denise, her mother.
You're not supposed to go get a tattoo right after surgery. You're not supposed to get a tattoo before you're preparing for chemo when your body's going to be weakened. But it's something she wanted to do, and one of Michelle's favorite phrases was, "You're not the boss of me."
I surprised her when we were there. I said, "Well, I'm right with you, Michelle. I'm going to get a tattoo there," and she was absolutely delighted. I think she probably thought it was the most outside-the-box thing I've ever done in my life, and it probably is.
JP and I said while we were there, we're gonna get the tattoo as well. And she said, no, I don't want you guys to get a tattoo. And so we did it anyways. And slowly thereafter, we got our friend Savannah that got it, and we would kidnap the Boyds here and there throughout the different races and charity events, and we all got tattoos with them, under some influence of alcohol, but we branded the Boyds pretty much.
Once we all had the tattoos, I started to realize that this fighter mentality that Michelle was sharing was becoming contagious. And I realized then that it was going to be much, much bigger than just the fight that Michelle was going through, that we were going through.
I want to introduce you right now to Michelle DeJong.
The local news media had picked up her story, had heard about how she was approaching this diagnosis, and wanted to share that story with the community.
One of the things that people have said over and over again on social media is how gorgeous you are, and I don't want to embarrass you, but people are very impressed by how beautiful you are and how beautiful your attitude is in spite of this really, really dark news.
Thank you, first of all. That is an awesome compliment to get. But I think, you know, we were chatting earlier that my news is not as devastating as it could be because of the people I'm surrounded by every single day.
Yeah.
There's, you know, nobody was going to let me quit or give up. My husband, my family, my friends, and that's where this kind of fighter attitude came from to begin with.
We weren't only going to be able to make a difference by sharing inspirations or by sharing a story with the news media, but you know, there was more opportunities to make a difference also. When Michelle was in the hospital having her shunt placed, and I saw a flyer from Miles from Moffitt. So while she was in the hospital, I started working on creating, you know, the team page, fundraising page. I put the initial fundraising goal at 5,000. I had to increase it to 10. I had to increase it to 15. I had to increase it to 20. You know, in 1 month's time, by the time the race finally came around, we had 360 some people on our team and raised over 50 grand, close to like 60 grand that first year.
Just the outpouring of love, and it really was like nothing I had seen before. I couldn't believe that many people had turned out to support her and to support all of us.
You're fighting brain cancer, you're in the middle of chemotherapy and radiation treatments, and you just did a 5K.
It was probably the slowest 5K of my life, but I wanted to get out there and do it. So I had a lot of friends and family, friends of friends, friends of family, people I didn't even know supporting me. So it was awesome.
Well, and I see you're wearing your fighter t-shirt, lots of people behind you wearing the fighter t-shirt. I understand there were hundreds of walkers and runners out there supporting you with bracelets for Team Michelle. What was that like to be out there with so many people supporting and running for you?
We had over 300 runners, and I think on behalf of everyone at Moffitt, that just means a ton. I'm only one person, and the fact that many people raised money and awareness for a center that treats so many people, you know, we're all fighters, so it was unbelievable. I'm not usually at a loss of words, but today's one of those days.
Michelle's story, we didn't realize really how widespread it had become. There's a little girl who lives in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and her name's Callie.
I'm Michelle. Stay strong.
She was given a Make-A-Wish, and her wish was to go to Disney World with her family. She told her mom that, well, when they're in Orlando, they have to spend a day and come to Tampa because she wanted to meet Michelle.
Hi, Callie.
Seeing Michelle interact with Callie was just really special. They hit it off right away, and you know they were a little bit of different diagnoses, but experiencing the same challenges. It's really cool to see her fight, and just to know that Michelle inspired that little girl to keep going, to keep fighting also.
It makes me want to fight so much harder, not just for myself, but for a cure.
We are forever fighters because of Michelle. We have our fighter t-shirts, the necklaces, the water bottles. Michelle and her fighter mentality has definitely left an impact on us forever.
And this is the plan. If I can just change one person, if I can just inspire one person, if one person treats someone else better because of this, because of me, then it'll all be worth it. And I mean, that's what it meant to be a fighter for her. She did a pretty good job of fighting cancer also.
She packed a lot into those 29 years. And so it's a good thing she went out and took those chances. You know, went away to school, started her own business, did the charitable work that she loved to do, you know, married Ryan, took on this project of a house. All of that, it's a good thing she went out and got it. You know, I'll miss the fact that there were so many unfilled dreams, and I would have loved to have watched her, you know, pick them off one at a time.
What message would she have for everyone who attends that celebration?
Go out and enjoy life. Probably don't be afraid to tell somebody that you love them.
Live life to the fullest. Take advantage of, you know, every opportunity you had.
Define what you love and fight for it.
The biggest message, and be the good.
To go out there, help the community, help others, and just overall be a great person.
The goal of this awesome celebration of life is to focus on the memories and focus on the legacy that Michelle has left. Focus on the life that she lived and how fun it was. And we have to remember to have fun. We have to remember to be happy. As hard as that might be, you know, right now, it's okay to be sad, but she wants us to be happy.